Hello, everybody. Our guest today is Gerry Madden from Indra Group. Thanks for joining us today, Gerry.
Thank you.
So please tell us about your business, what it does.
Yeah, Dave. So I work for a Spanish-based company, HQ in Madrid. In the main, I look after sort of my clients in Ireland and some of the UK also. But we globally are 62,000 employees. We operate in over 100 countries, 140 cities, and we're software, hardware. We do other things also, but from my part of the organization where I work, it's mobility and transportation.
Okay, and what sort of services do you provide in that sector?
So really across the whole gamut of mobility and transportation. So we're involved with providing technology which would help move 78 million people a day across the world, for example. So anything at all, Dave, that involves the movement of passengers using all modes of transport is really what we would claim is a core part of our mobility business.
No, that's good. And probably you're in our world all the time, but people probably don't realise it.
Possibly not, because you're going through a station in London to maybe go on the underground or anywhere across the whole network. Like, you're probably not looking at the gates that you're tapping. You just want to tap in, you want to go, you want to move. But all that hardware and all the software behind it, it's very significant, and someone has to provide that. That's what we do. But yeah, I don't myself stop. Well, I do actually, because I'm a bit of a nerd now. But I stop and look at some of these gates, and I look at our competitors' gates and the machines, etc. But generally, I understand most people wouldn't find that a good use of their time.
Until it doesn't work, of course, like everything else.
For sure. And then they're wanting to bring me the person who can fix this.
Yeah, definitely. I always ask this question to everyone: what brought you into the logistics world originally?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously, in my case, I'm going back quite a long time to when probably I would have first met you, Dave. I was working as a postman for Royal Mail in London. And genuinely, I joined that organization and thought, I'll do this for 6 months and I'll get a proper job. And I was still there nearly 30 years later, and I ended up I started as a postman, and I remember my first office that I worked in London was beautiful Hampstead. So it was a nice part of the world to learn your trade. And then it's one of those organizations, Royal Mail, you'd know probably yourself quite well, Dave, where my story wouldn't be unusual. People would say they've gone in for a year after school, or they weren't too sure what they wanted to do. And the next thing, they're still there 30, 40 years later. And because I only left in 2015, but I still have very fond memories of that organization. So it wasn't that I ever woke up one day and said, I really want to join Royal Mail, or I really want to be a postman. But you end up kind of just feeling like you're part of a family. Now, this family I'm talking about was 140,000 people, by the way. It was that big. Not quite so big now, but still significant. But you were still made to feel part of a great sort of family, a great team. And I carried different roles in that organization, and I ended up sort of doing many years in operations. But I ended up the last part of my career in Royal Mail actually in commercial, looking after some of our key clients, Amazon, Tesco, etc. Thoroughly enjoyable time, actually.
Yeah, most people, when we ask that question, generally fell into it rather than planned.
Yeah, absolutely.
As was I. So tell us about the sector you work in and how you see it developing, changing in the next few years.
I think in some cases, probably everybody who answers that question is going to jump to AI as the first thing they might mention, because actually it's kind of still emerging. And at the end of the day, we're not quite sure how it's going to affect our organization, our business. And we would spend a huge amount of money investing and learning and understanding the capabilities of AI and how we can use it to positive effect in our industry and how it might help our clients, our end users. So I think it's not something I see as a negative, but it's something that I think we haven't got there yet. People are still finding their way. But at the end of the day, I would always say, my personal opinion is, it's just another tool. And I still think about what makes me feel happy doing my job, and what the best client feedback I get is never about a piece of software or hardware. It's about listening to them. It's about delivering on the promises that you made to them. So for me, regardless of where we go on this AI journey, and as I said, I see it as a positive, huge opportunity for us and everybody in the sector. I think we should never lose sight of the fact that people will still always be needed, and people generally in the logistics. When I look back and talk about my times in Royal Mail and in this sector, it is the people that makes me smile, that gives me the fond memories. And I think that's still very relevant today as it was 30 years ago.
No, that's great. And also, so the next couple of questions are, what are the biggest opportunities and threats, and how do you see technology affecting the sector? And probably AI is a big part of that.
Yeah.
as well. So, no one knows what AI is going to do. But do you see AI as overall a big benefit or a potential negative?
Well, I think there's blockchain, there's digitalization, there's AI. There's a number of different things there that are, I would still say, are coming in front of us that are positives. So a lot of what we would look to do in our organization in terms of the investment, the R&D, would be how we maximize these tools and how we better use them, and how we better use them in the context of, will it help us increase customer journey, passenger journeys, the customer experience? And yes, we believe it will. Also, can we help, for instance, we work with a lot of local authorities, transport authorities in particular. So can we help them become more operationally efficient, more sustainable by using big data, by using AI? All these tools are there not to be frightened of, in my opinion. And I'm not even a techie, I should have said that at the beginning. So I'm probably the one who has to learn a lot more than others. But at the same time, if you look at these as opportunities coming at us, how you best use them, how you invest in them, and how you upskill your people, and in terms of the sustainability, all of that's therefore, why wouldn't you use these tools for best effect? And as long as it brings you back to, is it going to help deliver a better customer journey? And if there's operational efficiencies there, that's going to help authorities in terms of how they spend taxpayers' money. So for me, I look at it much more as a glass half full than I do anything other, Dave.
Okay, and you mentioned blockchain there, and a term I keep hearing used more and more in logistics. How, and I'm not a technical expert either, so where does the blockchain, where could will it influence something we see, or is it all behind the scenes?
I think possibly a bit of both, because whatever you're using and whatever you're doing behind the scenes, it should end up being something that, or if you don't see it as an end user, you should at least see the benefit of it or feel the benefit of it. But it might be like one of those things that it might be to you externally almost invisible, but it could have played a key part nonetheless.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate that. What are people in the sector perhaps not talking about that they should be?
Yeah, this is a tough one, actually, I think. And I'm going to go back to sort of where I'm no longer working. So in my sort of parcels logistics world, I always thought that perhaps there wasn't such a propensity for collaboration. It was always very competitive, and I understand that for good reasons, and it's still very competitive. But if I think about it just as a layperson, if I look out my front window now, and in terms of what's happening on my road, there could be 4 or 5 different vehicles delivering, whether they're delivering letters or parcels. And I've always just felt, and I still feel, that is there more of an opportunity for the players to collaborate better? And in some cases, that might be quite a cultural shift, but it just feels instinctive. I don't know what the solution is, but it feels to me that that should be looked at more than perhaps it is. If it is being looked at and it's happening, it's not something that I see as very visible.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's the same as you think of the M1, the M40, all the motorways in the UK that, you get every night. When I used to drive up and down those, I used to be counting how many parcel vehicles I see, how many pallet network vehicles. I know I need to get a life, but it's true. But also a lot of fresh air, sadly, is carried, particularly in the quieter time of the year. So it could do it. But if that was, that cooperation, collaboration, well, whatever term, do you think that can happen by market forces, or would that have to be driven almost by government getting involved and almost setting some guidelines?
I would say all of the aforementioned, Dave. I think certainly if there's a directive, particularly from government, then that might actually get people feeling like it or not, we have to come around this table and we have to think about that and explore that at the very least. But you'd like to see progressive organizations kind of leading the way and not having to be told or having been directed to do something, but they see it as the right thing to do. And listen, we talk about the climate and the green directive, and like that's hugely important. And therefore, it is not right to walk up any high street and have a look and see the amount of vehicles that are carrying, in some cases, as you say, fresh air.
You're right. And interestingly, the next question I was going to ask is, how do you see the green transition impacting, what Indra do?
Well, Indra takes its responsibilities hugely in this space, and for right good reasons. We as a nature of our very business, we are hugely reliant upon the supply chain. So it's incumbent upon us to only work with people and to source goods that are coming with the right credentials and the integrity, and that have, you know, the whole environment at the front and center. So that's kind of really sacrosanct for our organization. But even if that wasn't at the core of our organization, you know, clients and indeed even employees, in terms of people who want to come and work for you, they won't work for organizations that are not doing the right thing. So from my perspective, you wouldn't be able to survive in this business going forward if you didn't already have that in your DNA. And certainly in terms of trying to win business from authorities, from government bodies, from whoever it is, you know, you would not be able to survive for too long because you are not doing what is right. And to be frank, for us, we don't see it as anything other than it's a good thing. Again, going back to my earlier question, sometimes it'd be nicer to see these things happening without them being directives. But on this occasion, I think kind of a directive was required. And I think we still have work to do in this space. But everybody, I think, and end users themselves, they don't want to be buying products or using services from an organization that at some point in the supply chain, they have questions about the credentials.
Yeah, no, it'd be great. Yeah, I think everyone has a desire and a passion to be greener, but the challenge is, you know, how is it done and how is it paid for, and how do you make sure it's being done? Because you do get, you know, you get comments made about different sectors where everyone appears to be more greener than they really are. That's not criticism, just a viewpoint I hear. Yeah, it's a challenge. What development in the sector has surprised you most in your career so far?
Oh, it's another good question. And actually, I think what surprised me is the fact that what was really, really important and key back in my day when I was starting out, particularly on my sales career, and this goes back to really the great investment that Royal Mail made in their people at the time. They had a high bar when it came to key account management, etc. And what was really sacrosanct then was the whole thing of 2 ears, 1 mouth. Customer is king. And they might sound actually quite old Luddite type things to be saying, but I suppose what I'm pleasantly surprised about, to answer your question, is those principles, and again, what customers brings them back time after time in terms of trusting you, buying off you again. And I see it in you know, having left Royal Mail, I'm talking about the context of working in a business that was passenger transport, now a tech company, you know, listening to your customers and acting on what they're telling you and delivering on your promises. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Still there, still absolutely key.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And sometimes as customers, we don't always know what we want. And sometimes don't always say it. It needs to be almost drawn out of us. And it's not people being secretive, but, you know, when you talk to people, you know, you get to eventually understand what they really, really want, because, yeah, price is all part of everything. Being green is part of everything, but it's got to do what you need it to do rather than being a super tech, whatever sector you're in, super techie. That's not practical. You know, you want everything that's, you know, and
the tools come and go. You know, technology changes, and it's a great thing. But, you know, if you still feel that you can call somebody up and they can come and they'll talk to you and they will hear about a problem and they're responsible for fixing it, and they go and fix it, you kind of want to buy off them again.
Yeah, you're right. It's traditional values, and I totally agree. And, you know, and everyone wants everything to be frictionless, you know. So, you know, if you can provide a service or a product that works, does what you're supposed to do, has the features and benefits that people require, rather than all the, it's, you know, super sexy, it can do this and that. It's got to do what you need it to do and be at a sensible and fair price, what you need to do. That's a very good point. And those traditional values, you know, are part of business, you know. I agree totally. And the last question I ask everyone, Gerry, is if you could speak to the government, you know, and that doesn't matter where it is, whether it's be the UK, Irish, it hasn't got to be anywhere specific, what would you ask them to do to help your business grow and flourish?
Well, I'd say to care, deliver on your promises. There's a theme there, Dave.
As simple as that, yeah. Good. No, I agree. And yeah, talk is cheap, as they say. And yeah, and as you know, part of UK PLC, we all want the government to do well and flourish because it's better for us and our family and friends. No, good. Okay. Well, look, I just want to say thank you very much, Gerry, for your time. It's really lovely to speak to you, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners will enjoy it and be watching out for Indra in their day-to-day work.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Dave.